World No Tobacco Day 2022. Tobacco utilization has become a well-documented worldwide health problem. Tobacco kills over 8 million people each year while also destroying our environmental and endangering human health through cultivation, production, distribution, consumption as well as post-consumption waste. As per the GATT survey, more than 7 million of deaths are caused by direct tobacco use, while approximately 1.2 million are caused by non-smokers who have been exposed to second-hand smoking globally. The Global Adult Tobacco Survey, GATS, is indeed a nationally representative survey that employs a coherent and standard protocol throughout countries such as Sri Lanka. Approximately 80% of smokers live in low and middle income nations. Sri Lanka already has tobacco initiatives in place to minimize requirements for tobacco products and protect the health of their people. The National Authority on Tobacco and Alcohol Act, NATA Act, was enacted in 2006 to protect public health from tobacco and alcohol related harm. Also, National Authority on Tobacco and Alcohol, NATA, conducted a public opinion survey in 2021, as well as the outcome indicating the general public understands the importance of seeking to impose effective tobacco regulatory requirements. The results showed that 77.5% have claimed that they have observed indirect tobacco promotions through the digital media, and 94.5% agree with banning tobacco sale within an area of 500 meters from schools in Sri Lankan context. The tobacco industry's environmental impact is massive as well as expanding rapidly, attempting to put unnecessary burden on our planet by now scarce resources as well as fragile ecosystems. The tobacco life cycle is indeed a massively polluting and harmful practice from beginning to end. World No Tobacco Day is an annual awareness program held on May 31st annually. The World No Tobacco Day theme focuses on a specific problem related to tobacco as well as tobacco industry. This year's concept refers to increasing community awareness on the environmental effect of the whole tobacco cycle, from cultivation to manufacture and supply to toxic waste, as well as objectives to reveal tobacco companies' attempts to greenwash their public image by marketing themselves as eco-friendly. Tobacco use imposes a significant humanistic as well as economic burden. Tobacco use is associated with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, respiratory illnesses, cancer, diabetes, hypertension as well as other disease. Tobacco use in an enclosed areas is a major cause of air pollution because it emits toxins into the air, increasing the likelihood of bystander exposure. Annually, second-hand smoking causes the premature death of 1.2 million people worldwide in relation to cardiovascular and respiratory diseases. According to the findings of 2018, the total worldwide economic cost of smoking, including both medical cost and lost productivity, has been identical to 1.8% of the world's annual GDP. Around 40% of this cost was borne by developing nations. Tobacco use impedes economic growth. The estimated annual mortality from tobacco-related illnesses is about 20,000, with 55% of deaths occurring under the age of 70 Sri Lankan citizens, which are approximately 60 people die per day due to tobacco use, and the cost of the national health system Sri Lankan rupees 8.3 billion. Tobacco use is associated with increased severity of disease and death in hospitalized COVID-19 patients. In 2015, 45% of male and 5.3% of females in Sri Lanka reported currently using some form of tobacco product. Overall, 9.1% of adults, approximately 1.5 million adults, and 19.7% of men and 0.04% women currently smoke tobacco in Sri Lanka as per the GATS survey 2020. Tobacco-related premature mortality is estimated to cost Sri Lankan rupees 179.3 billion in economic loss. In 2016, tobacco smoking cost an economic productivity loss due to tobacco use in Sri Lanka was estimated to be Sri Lankan rupees 213.8 billion, equivalent to 1.6% of its gross domestic product, GDP. In 2020, global mean economic cost of 100 packs of manufactured cigarettes as a percentage of per capita GDP is 18.1%, whereas mean cost of 100 bundles or packs of manufactured cigarettes as a percentage of per capita GDP is 2.1%. The tobacco industry employs underhanded tactics to greenwash its public image and depicts itself as a sustainable and eco-friendly sector. These techniques have been used to conceal the fact that tobacco farming, production, consumption and use are harmful to both the environment and the health of farmers and tobacco smokers. For instance, the industry's self-reported information is intended to deceive the public into reducing the impacts of tobacco cultivation on the environmental and communities across the globe. The marketing and eco-labeling of cigarettes as natural as well as organic leads tobacco users to assume the products are not hazardous to each other. Trees have been felled to make space for tobacco cultivation, as well as wood has been burned to cure tobacco leaves after harvest. To make 300 cigarettes, nearly one entire tree is required. Annually, 200,000 hectares of natural forest are destroyed around the world for tobacco cultivation and curing. Tobacco has been responsible for the loss of an estimated 1.5 billion hectares of forest, mostly tropical, worldwide since the 1970s, accounting for up to 20% of annual greenhouse gas increases. Tobacco production records for 5% of the nation's total deforestation, impacting tobacco growing areas around the world hugely disproportionate, such as Southern Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, South America and the Caribbean. Tobacco has been cultivated on fertile land which could be used to grow nutritious crops. Tobacco is a significant cause of environmental degradation in Sri Lanka, causing an estimated soil loss of 70 hectare per year. A massive amount of chemicals have been used in tobacco farming to combat pests, fungal infections as well as weeds. Tobacco farmings deplete soil, which adds to food insecurity and nutritional challenges. It is expensive to rehabilitate the soil after tobacco farming. According to the data collected in 2014, reversing the negative consequences of smoking farming on soil in Bangladesh might well cost $20.6 million USD. Desertification caused by tobacco cultivation is now visible in several countries, including Brazil, India, Jordan, and Cuba. Tobacco products waste is indeed environmentally harmful. Tobacco cultivation alone necessitates the same volume of water which an individual would necessitate for a whole year. A single cigarette appears to require approximately 3.7 liters of water throughout its entire lifespan, which involving growing, manufacturing, distribution, utilization as well as disposal. If the average smoker quits, they could serve approximately 74 liters of water each day. According to the number of cigarettes generated in 2015 in Brazil, the world's third largest tobacco manufacturer estimated that 263.8 billion liters of water were used to produce its yearly basis supply. Considering the average person consumes approximately 700 liters of water each year, if all of this water have been transformed to drinking water, it would be enough to hydrate approximately 3.7 million population, or roughly the entire population of the capital Brazil. Tobacco cultivation generates significant harm towards the environment due to the immense utilization of toxic substance, energy and water. Cigarette smoking emits more than 7,000 chemicals into the environment, 70 of which have been identified as carcinogens. As per the statistics published on the Ceylon Tobacco Company, CTC PLC 2020, they are consuming 33,052 cubic meters of water, GHG emissions, 4,043 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, and 31,891 gigajoules of energy for 5,343 million cigarettes equivalent for their production. In 2017, Sri Lanka announced its intention to phase out tobacco cultivation within 5 years with a reduction of approximately 15 to 20% per year. CTC is responsible for the overall production process in Sri Lanka, from tobacco cultivation to cigarette production. According to an EPA study, one cigarette buds was soaked in fresh water for 96 hours. Roughly half of their fish died. Tobacco smoke contributes to greater levels of pollution and emits 3 types of greenhouse gases emissions, such as carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxides, polluting both interior and exterior environments. All across the life cycle of a single cigarette, 14 grams of carbon dioxide has been emitted. Tobacco industry accounts for nearly 84 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions per year. Cigarette butts with filters have been the most frequently littered item on the entire globe, with an estimated 4.5 trillion thrown into the environment every year. The estimated annual weight of generated waste as a whole tobacco life cycle is approximately 25 million metric tons. Cigarette filters or buds are also not biodegradable. It takes roughly 10 years for nicotine and the other chemicals to leach into the local ecosystem. Most commercial cigarettes contain a cellulose acetate filter, which is poorly degradable, as well as sources of microplastic contamination in the environment. According to the littering behavior surveys, approximately 65% of smokers inadequately discard cigarette butts. In Sri Lanka, estimated 1,886 tons of cigarette butts and packaging waste end up as toxic rubbish each year. Tobacco production and the littering of cigarette butts together damage arable land, waterways, beaches and air, threatening Sri Lanka's food security, drinking water, tourism and the climate. About 19 million people in Sri Lanka now live in locations on track to become moderate to severe hotspots for climate change depredation by 2050. The leachate from one cigarette butt placed into 1 liter of water will kill half of all marine and freshwater fish which come into contact with it. Pollution of cigarette butts can hurt tourism in Sri Lanka. The disposal of e-cigarette cartridge and batteries poses a significant risk to the environment. The vast majority of plastic e-cigarettes cartridge are not reusable for recycled content, and they end up in gutters, pavements and waterways. As per 2017 global estimate, 99 billion pounds of e-waste has been discarded yearly, as well as accumulates in the environment including soil, air, water and living things. Improper disposal of these product lines is highly polluting because it contains non-biodegradable materials like metal coils, plastic, atomizers, batteries and microcontroller chips. Furthermore, many of these products are one-time use only. Plastic waste materials, environmental, human and ecological loss, particularly to marine biology, has been well demonstrated. Across many regions where smokeless tobacco products such as gutka, pan masala and other are packaged and sold, the indiscriminated use of plastic sachets, pouches has become a new environmental concern. This issue of using plastic pouches to package smokeless tobacco has been mainly restricted to South Asian economies, and it has become a worldwide threat within the last decade due to heavy advertising and the introduction of gutka and pan masala into new Asian and African market. As per the GATS result, 5% of smokeless tobacco users who thought about quitting because of warning labels. Tobacco smoke is associated with exposure to lung cancer, cardiovascular disease and pulmonary disease. Exposure to residual chemical smoking environments might have human health consequences. Though these consequences have yet to be quantified. There are numerous ways tobacco's environmental impact affects human health. A tobacco farmer who plant, cultivate as well as harvest tobacco could absorb quite as much nicotine as 50 cigarettes each day. Tobacco cultivation yield poor economic return or workers, and it is associated with health risk to farmers. Green tobacco sickness or GTS is a type of nicotine poisoning which affects 1 out of every 4 farmers. Tobacco farmers also may have higher levels of aluminium and arsenic in their blood as a result of exposure to pesticides. Chronic pesticides exposure causes a variety of health problems such as birth defects, benign and malignant tumors, genetic changes, blood disease, neurological disorders as well as endocrine disruption. Children are frequently employed on tobacco plantation, and they are especially vulnerable because their body weight is proportional to the amount of nicotine absorbed through their own skin from controlling tobacco leaves. Youth tobacco farmers may have an elevated risk of early kidney failure and also a higher smoking prevalence. Women's health has been disproportionately impacted by the harmful consequences of tobacco farming due to a higher risk of infertility and reproductive disorders. Tobacco cultivation expressed concern regarding numerous negative health and social consequences across the country. Out-of-pocket healthcare expenditure on tobacco attributed disease worth Sri Lankan rupees 5.9 billion in 2019, impacting poverty and exacerbating inequalities in Sri Lanka. According to Article 18 of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control Practices, agreed to have consideration for the environmental protection and the health of individuals in relation to its environment in appreciation of tobacco cultivation as well as manufacture inside of their respective areas. In 2021, NATA has initiated the alternative crops for tobacco cultivation in order to implement economically viable alternative livelihoods for tobacco farmers in Monaragala and Anuradhapura districts. The result of these initiatives indicated that 51% of farmers have stopped from the cultivation of tobacco, while 24% of farmers reduced the tobacco cultivation and 18% of landowners seeks to stop cultivated the tobacco in both districts. Overall, 78% of land could be able to reduce from the tobacco cultivation. The following supportive measures are recommended to overcome this problem, such as farmers can be motivated to engage in crops substitution by expanding more sustainable crops which will advantage the community's well-being. Countries might also take necessary measures to process the use of single-use non-biodegradable plastic in cigarette filters as well as other nicotine products. Furthermore, countries can implement the extended producer responsibility policy principle to reduce tobacco and e-cigarette material wastage and hold smoking and related industry liable for cleanup as well as waste disposal expenditures. Governments could indeed leave an environmental tax on tobacco companies, distribution companies and consumers to compensate for carbon emission, air pollution as well as other environmental costs incurred during the tobacco product supply chain. Thank you.